It is the 15th of November 2018, and in West Nicholson, Zimbabwe, a Brooklyn Express bus travels through darkness along the Bulawayo-Beitbridge Road. The bus carries passengers from Zvishavane toward the South African border. Inside, weary travelers settle in for the final stretch of their journey to Musina, where economic opportunities await beyond Zimbabwe's struggling borders. The conductor reaches for the light switch, a simple gesture to help passengers see in the darkness. It seems so innocent, so routine. In seconds, the bus becomes an inferno. This is the story of the Gwanda bus fire, a tragedy born not of fate or mechanical failure, but of a deadly chain of preventable human failures that converged on a dark November night. To understand this tragedy, we must first understand the road that claimed so many lives. The Bulawayo-Beitbridge Road stretches 320 kilometers across Zimbabwe's southern provinces, connecting the landlocked nation to its economic lifeline, South Africa. This ribbon of asphalt carries more than just vehicles. It carries the hopes and dreams of millions seeking opportunities beyond their borders. In 2018, Zimbabwe's economy was in free fall. Unemployment soars high. Basic necessities became unaffordable luxuries. For many Zimbabweans, the journey to South Africa wasn't tourism, it was economic survival. Teachers, students, traders, and workers packed buses like the Brooklyn Express, carrying their futures in single bags. Brooklyn Express Bus Company had built its reputation serving this critical route. Like many transport operators in Zimbabwe's competitive industry, the company connected communities across challenging terrain, from bustling urban centers to remote rural towns. But by 2018, the entire transport sector was under pressure. Economic hardship led to cost-cutting measures across the industry. Vehicle maintenance was deferred. Safety checks became perfunctory. The pressure to maximize passenger loads often overrode safety concerns, a dangerous calculus that prioritized profit over protection. The Gwanda district, where this tragedy would unfold, sits in Zimbabwe's mining heartland. The landscape is both harsh and beautiful, rolling hills dotted with mine headframes, small towns connected by roads that wind through the countryside. It was here, near West Nicholson, that the fault lines in Zimbabwe's transportation system would finally fracture with deadly consequences. November 15th began like countless other days on Zimbabwe's highways. In Zvishavane, passengers gathered at the bus terminal with the practiced efficiency of people who had made this journey many times before. Their belongings were packed with the careful precision of those who carry their entire lives in a single bag. The Brooklyn Express bus was a familiar sight, one of dozens that plied this route daily, ferrying passengers between Zimbabwe's interior and the promise of South Africa. As passengers boarded, they carried their usual mix of personal belongings, gifts for family across the border, and small items to trade or sell in Musina's markets. Among these seemingly innocent possessions was something that violated every safety regulation. A gas canister, illegally smuggled aboard despite clear company prohibitions against transporting flammable materials. Perhaps the passenger intended to use it for cooking or heating, basic necessities in a struggling economy. The departure from was unremarkable. Passengers settled into their seats as the bus made its scheduled stops along the route, collecting more travelers at each town. The familiar rhythm of long-distance travel took hold, conversations, dozing, gazing out windows at the passing landscape. As afternoon turned to evening, the bus approached the final leg of its journey. Hidden in the luggage compartment, the illegally transported gas canister had begun to leak. Slowly, silently, flammable vapor seeped into the passenger cabin. The enclosed space was becoming a death trap, and no one knew it. As the bus traveled through the darkness near West Nicholson, some passengers began to notice something wrong. Survivors later treated at Gwanda Hospital would describe a distinct smell filling the cabin, the sharp, unmistakable odor of gas. The illegal canister hidden among the luggage was leaking its deadly contents, responding to passengers' need for light in the dark cabin. The conductor reached for the interior light switch. It was a simple gesture of courtesy, the kind of small kindness that makes long journeys more bearable for weary travelers. He flipped the switch. The electrical spark, tiny, brief, normally harmless, met the gas-saturated air with catastrophic results. The explosion was instantaneous and devastating. Flames erupted throughout the cabin with a violence that defied comprehension, racing along every surface faster than human reflexes could respond. Survivor accounts describe hell itself unleashed. The fire spread with terrifying speed, fed by the leaked gas and the bus's interior materials. Passengers who had been chatting or resting moments before found themselves trapped in an inferno. By the time help arrived, the fire had largely burned itself out, leaving behind a scene of devastation that tested the limits of human endurance to witness. In those terrible minutes on a dark road near West Nicholson, 32 people lost their lives, not to accident or fate, but to a preventable chain of human failures that had been years in the making. In the chaotic aftermath of the Gwanda bus fire, even determining the exact death toll proved challenging. Zimbabwe police spokeswoman Charity Charamba initially reported at least 42 deaths, a figure that dominated international headlines and reflected the confusion that follows such disasters. But as authorities worked through the devastation with methodical care, a different picture emerged. Brooklyn Express Bus Company later confirmed 32 fatalities, a more precise count reflecting careful identification of remains. The discrepancy wasn't unusual. Preliminary casualty counts in large-scale disasters are often revised as authorities process scenes methodically rather than relying on initial estimates. The confusion over numbers reflected a horrific reality. Many victims were burned beyond recognition. The intense heat of the fire had damaged remains so severely that immediate visual identification was impossible. DNA testing would be required to give families the closure of knowing their loved one's fate, a process that would extend their agony for weeks. 20 to 30 additional passengers survived, many bearing severe burns that would mark them physically and psychologically for life. These survivors faced not just the trauma of their injuries, but the psychological weight of having witnessed horrors that would haunt them forever. At Gwanda Provincial Hospital, authorities established a help desk to assist families desperately searching for information about their loved ones. Parents, spouses, and children gathered in hospital corridors, clinging to hope while fearing the worst. The DNA identification process became a secondary ordeal. Weeks of uncertainty about whether to mourn or maintain hope. The investigation into the Gwanda bus fire quickly focused on a single, devastating cause: the gas canister that should never have been aboard the bus. The Herald newspaper reported that authorities suspected a gas tank belonging to one of the passengers caused the inferno in the bus. This finding was corroborated by Brooklyn Express Bus Company management, which confirmed that the explosion resulted from a gas canister smuggled by a passenger into the luggage compartment. The company's response revealed both genuine grief and strategic positioning. The managing director issued public statements expressing heartfelt condolences and sincere apologies to Zimbabwe as a whole. But the company also emphasized that traveling with gas canisters is prohibited on our buses, a statement that served multiple purposes. While offering sympathy, this response subtly shifted responsibility onto the passenger who had violated safety regulations. The Gwanda fire wasn't an isolated failure, but part of a broader pattern of cost-cutting, corner-cutting, and regulation ignoring that had become normalized across the industry. The disaster should have prompted comprehensive reforms. Enhanced enforcement of safety regulations, improved emergency response capabilities, economic support that reduced passengers' desperation to transport dangerous items, and industry-wide improvements to safety culture and practices. Safety enforcement remains inadequate across the industry. Emergency response capabilities remain limited, particularly in rural areas where accidents often prove most devastating. The economic pressures that drive people to take dangerous risks persist, unaddressed by meaningful policy interventions. More than 6 years have passed since the Gwanda bus fire. But the lessons of that November night remain painfully relevant for Zimbabwe and beyond.